Hello everyone, Mark Sajan again, and we are using ZBrush 4R8. This is an old version of ZBrush, but actually the principles of FiberMesh is true for almost all applications across. The first part of the video will focusing on the very basics of FiberMesh and a couple things you might want to use and know of. This is about masking and selection. So if you're already familiar with this, you can skip. But it is a good idea to refresh the knowledge, especially if you're a beginner. It's a good idea to have an overview about the basic tools we are using. So first of all, let me make it sure that this is a polymesh model, and Shift F, turn it on. So now we see the polymesh function, and the way to create FiberMesh is fairly easy. So once you have a model that is selected and available, you can walk down and go down and look for FiberMesh. So here's the rollout, and actually you can hit on preview and boom, FiberMesh is already there. Now please keep it ahead that when you are using the polyframe function, so polyframe is turned on here, Shift F. So if I'm turning this off, polyframes are renderable. So when you are hitting BPR render or pressing Shift R, it will render with colors. And this is one thing. The other thing is that the fibers are actually picking up the polygon group information. So because we have kind of a reddish polygon group, we have kind of a reddish appearance for the fibers. It's not the fiber, not the color of the fiber, it is the wire of the fiber. So this is where the fill, actually, this is why we see it in red. So if you want accurate information about the colors, you have to press Shift F, turn off the polyframe, and then hit Shift R or press BPR to render your preview. So this is one thing to know. The other thing is that you have multiple steps to get your results. So right now we are in preview mode, and when we are done with our settings and the basic adjustments, we can go here and accept the changes were made, and then the FiberMesh will be created. Now please make sure that you understand that these modifiers, so what we have, these are not good for making haircuts. Alright, these are the behavior, the appearance, the basics of the style of the hair or the growth of the hair. But the shaping, the forming is a different step. So first you are adjusting the basics, and once you have the basics, the standard kind of an appearance of a hair and property of a hair, then when you hit accept, then you have access to actually paint and sculpt the hair the way you want. Now another important thing to keep an eye on it is we have preview settings and we have BPR settings. So because fibers are really consuming memory, and it's really time consuming to create a complex fiber like a haircut, you have to simplify things as much as possible to get relatively quick results and a responsive working environment. So for that, we have the previous settings, and the previous settings, fast preview now is turned off. I can turn it on, and also there is this 100 pre-visual fibers visibility. So if I'm just dialing this down, I see less of the fibers, but still if I'm pressing Shift R, the BPR setting will be showing me the actual amount of hairs. Alright, so this is kind of a shortcut that helps to reduce the stress on your workflow and other things. Now, why do we care about this pre-visualization? So sometimes it is better if you see less of the hairs, because it makes it easier to select and recognize the shapes and patterns within the structure. Alright, so if you have too many visual information, too much visual information, it could be a little bit demanding, so it's hard to recognize where you are, what you have to select, how to approach that, what you have to mask. So it's too much of a thing. I don't want to be that drastic, so I've set it about 50, and that's okay. Now another setting that is here, the BPR settings. The BPR settings are it's imagine that you have an additional modifier. So once the fibers are completed, you still see a simplified version of the fibers within the viewport. And to enhance the quality, for example, the flow, the subdivision of the hairs, you can still adjust the BPR settings. So these adjustments will take place when the rendering is completed. So this is one last step to improve the visual qualities of the fibers. Alright, so we have a couple of steps, and there's a workflow presented here. So we are creating a selection. We need to have a model, then we have to highlight the area we want to use fibers. Then we have the preview, making the modifications, and once we're done and accepted, we can still have an effect on the appearance of our fibers by using the BPR settings. Okay, another thing that you need to know, that time to time there is a tendency that this preview is turning off. It may happen, so if you see that the fibers are disappearing, when you hit again preview, there's nothing wrong about this. It will get back the latest adjustments that you made. Okay, so that's how it goes. Another important thing that, let me turn this off and let me create another item. So probably a plane 3D. Alright, so this plane 3D is actually, let me check the display properties and make a polymesh model. So display properties, it's not a double anymore, so that means there's one side that's visible and the other side is not. So if you are creating fur or hair on a plane like this, and let me go to FiberMesh and let me hit on preview. So one side is now it has hair. You don't see the plane, but it's clearly visible that the hair is only on one side. But if a double, let me turn off the preview, but if double is turned on, so display properties and double turned on, and you're going up here and FiberMesh and preview, now you have hair on both sides. So sometimes it is good, sometimes it's beneficial, but if you accidentally make this and forget to turn off this double feature, you may end up with a lot higher count of geometry than you've originally planned. Okay, so please keep that in mind. This display properties should be turned off if you don't want to fully load the computer. So let me preview, turn on and off. Now another thing, before you're jumping in, you can actually open different type of fibers from Lightbox. This is much better if you have some time and you're just looking around different types of fibers. So let me go in here. All right, close it up, and you can see the structure of the fibers, and you can play with the various adjustments to see yourself how these are influencing that you see. And also let me zoom out a little bit and look for a preview render. So Shift R and create a preview render. So this is one way to create different fibers. These presets are better if you're creating something that's kind of generated, but if you are looking for a haircut where you have to use a specific style and adjust the length and everything else, it could be a little bit off. Now another thing, let me go back to my sphere. So here we are. This is our sphere. Shift F to see the actual frame. And let me tell you a couple of things about how to organize the stuff. So first of all, if you have an animal that is painted, so you have colors, let me show this situation. So we have a basic color. Let me switch to a kind of a reddish color and go to color and fill object. And let me switch and select another type of color that's fairly strong. RGB is on, standard brush is used. There's no add or sub. So let me start painting a couple things, a couple stripe-like elements. So here we go. This is it. And maybe, oh, we don't need another one. So here we are, and this is a basic page. And now let me go to preview, and this is my preview. So we have plenty of fur here and there, and as you see, there's an underlying color and there's a fiber color, but the fiber color is not matching to the underlying color. So if you want to paint an animal that has kind of patterns and fur within the fur, like a tiger, you want to use and want to pick up the color information that has already created. So right now the base is black and the tip is this grayish one. So the tip color is set to 1, and if I crank it down, as you see, the tip color is picking up the information that already presented. Okay, so it's a good thing. The base color is set to 0.5. That means it is a nice blend. You can keep it as it is because it creates a little bit of a better feeling of depth. You can see how the depth appears here because of this dark blend. Okay, now another thing, let me turn off this preview and see what we have here, and press Shift F. And Shift F will show me the polygon fill. And now here's a little issue and a little trick that can help you, because sometimes it's confusing that you see the painting color and also the polygroup colors. So let me go here in the geometry, subtools, and at the subtool close to the name there is this paintbrush icon, and this paintbrush icon will turn on and off the poly paint. Okay, so this is what you see now is purely the color. Okay, so if you, especially if you set it to white, it will be an interactive one. So now the color is easy to adjust because the poly paint is turned off. But when you are turning back on poly paint, this color selector is not, it's not active anymore because we already assigned a color for this sphere. Okay, and we can actually create polygon groups. But we want to create polygon groups based on the color paint. So how will that work? We can go down, and there is an option, rollout, called polygroups. Now within polygroups, we can automatically generate polygroups based on basic principles. Now here, this will be based on polypaint. Okay, so because we have existing polypaint information, and we can go and click here based from polypaint, and let me control drag, Shift F, and see what we have. So go in the subtool, turn off this, Shift F, and as you see, this is the polypaint information. So this is the polypaint information, and if I'm turning off the polypaint information and turning back on, Shift F, the fill here at the bottom of my screen. So I have a little bit of a small screen to make it a little bit easier on the video. So as you see, we have matching polygon groups. Now when matching polygon groups are there, we can turn off this, Shift F, and walk down back to FiberMesh, hit again preview, and the previous settings are there. So the color information are the same. But more than that, if we're pressing Shift F, we also have the polygroup information transferred to the fibers. So why do we care about this? Because we can hit accept, and yes, we want to turn on this polypaint. Sorry, fast preview. And here we are. This is the fibers. Let me turn off the original sphere. And these fibers, we can actually select the specific types of fibers. So I'm pressing Ctrl Shift and tapping on the bluish area. So that was the polygon group. And now those are not visible. Okay, if I'm clicking Ctrl Shift and tapping outside, everything becomes visible. If I'm selecting on Ctrl Shift and hiding away the bigger part, so tapping on there, Control, and invert the selection. So now there is a separated group that is different in color. So these are the green ones. Ctrl Shift and drag outside. So I'm in the select. These are the red ones. Okay, and this is a different polygon group. Okay, few colors are just bleeding through, so that might be it's not that super accurate because there's much more fibers than actual polygons, and the polygon grouping was not that accurate, but it's still a good starting point. So now you have two things at the same time. You have different colors for the fur, and you have different polygon groups for the fur. And the big deal with that is you can Control Shift, switch to select, rectangle selection, and tapping to see everything, tapping on one thing to show that only. So now you have the fibers. Alright, let's start to play some games with the fibers, just to cover the very basics, alright, because we have special adjustments for the basics, for the fibers. So the typical brushes is Betty and G, like grooming, B, Betty and Gina, and probably one of the most easy to use tool at the beginning is the groom hair toss. The reason I hesitate is because these grooming tools are great tools, but they are fairly aggressive. So when you start jumping in and start using these tools, these could be really strong, and you have to have some kind of a knowledge if you want to control them. I like to use them only in the last stages, but for testing and looking things up, it's fairly easy to start with them. So this was the groom hair toss, like Betty, Gina, and A, like Albert. That is the code for that. It's a groom hair toss. Another valuable part of this special grooming brushes is the B, G, E. That's the groom hair lengthen. Now let me Control Shift and isolate this green part and drag these. So I want to make them a little bit longer. Okay, and Control Shift and tap and see what we have. Alright, so the principles, the reason we are taking care of these fibers, because if you want to control them individually, you have to have these polygon groups. Otherwise, it's a little bit hard to play with those. Okay, we will go through some of the other brushes as well. Right now, what you have to recognize that polygon groupings are very important. You can create polygon groups through the painting, but I will show other methods as well. Okay, so let me go back to the polygon sphere and see a couple other settings. So walking down and go to the FiberMesh, and just to cover a couple things before we are jumping in and creating the hair for the figure. So first of all, there's the max number of fibers. This 50,000 is fair enough for human hair, for a full figure's hair, and it's not really affecting the length. So it is much more like the density of the hair. If you want to create more volume by adding length, you can always do that. And at the end of the day, the hairstyle will also affect how dense the hair will look. So that impression is also influenced by the hairstyle that you do. There is a length profile and there's the length value. Now this is a little bit tricky. The length value, so if I'm cranking this up, length value 200 is fairly small. And as you see, as we're cranking this up, the length is added, but it's not that fluid, it's not that soft as real hair. And the reason is that we have only a reduced amount of segments. So if there are no segments, gravity cannot really play out, and the hair fibers cannot really follow the surface, so they're not really picking up geometry information. So what you need to do is to adjust the segments number. So that is set to 3. It's okay if you have short fur, but if you adjust it somewhat about 20, it will be much more closer to real life geometry. Okay, now as you see, we still have a couple of flyers, so we still have a couple of hairs they're not really following the changes in structures. There's nothing wrong with that, because we'll adjust later on the combing, and we have some kind of imperfections by adding a twist, and also a couple calculation or errors too. So don't be afraid if you have a couple flyers of hair. It may happen. All right. So now, what's up next? Please make a note for yourself that this profile is good if you want to adjust it and you want to create actual geometry around the center of the fiber. So the fiber actually is a line. It's a line in 3D space. Now, when you are creating the rendering, this line is rendered as geometry, so that it has kind of a thickness of it. But when you are adjusting profile and set it to 3 or 4, that means you will end up 4-sided cylinders or 5-sided cylinders. And when you are hitting on accept, you will end up having the fibers and the surrounding geometry. If you want to turn it to Dynamesh, you can do it later on. So this one is useful if you have a little bit of shorter hair. So let me show that. So let me reduce the max number of fibers, and also reduce the length. Okay, so in this case, and zooming in, and what I will do is I will change the coverage. So right now the coverage is set to 10, and I will increase the coverage with a huge amount of number. So that is the coverage. Let me set the twist to 0. So right now there is no turning. This is kind of a simple hair stripes, and we can still increase the overall coverage. So let me increase the coverage. Now these are fairly thick, and reduce in connection with that, we can reduce the number of fibers. Now, because we have a fairly high segment number, I haven't adjusted it, so I need to lower the segment number, and that will elevate a little bit of these. And now here comes the trick. So if you want to actually create thickness, you can adjust this profile. It will ask you, do you really want to do this? Yes. And now, boom, you have geometry. Okay, so we can still increase the coverage a little bit more, and this is the width profile, length profile, so we can still adjust the width profile. We can still crank this up a little bit, and by using these. Okay, and now we have, alright, skip this note until the start. Okay, so now we have a 3D geometry that's could be used for printing. You can hit accept, and actually you can use this, and you can even sculpt this. But right now, because the density is that much, there is an overlap. Okay, so this is a good thing. You can even comb this down if you wish, or just lengthen this a little bit more, but be careful, because you know the line segments was pretty low. So in this case, even if you stretch this out, you're not adding segments. Alright, so this is why it looks like much more like spikes. But if your goal is to create something like that, or wear dense fur for 3D printing or something, you can use that. I've added a subdivision, so let me add another one. So good news that we have a set of furs, and actually these are open tubes. Probably we can go down. Let me undo the subdivision. Ctrl Z, undo the subdivision, and we can go down geometry and modify topology, and there is a cat close holes. So Ctrl D now, and as you see, if I'm pressing Ctrl D, there's no opening gaps, because we already closed the holes of the fibers. Here we go, and do the lower, and modify topology, close holes, make sure that it is closing, and Dynamesh, and to 300 and Dynamesh. Okay, so now we have a solid Dynamesh model. Alright, so that's actually a single volume, so everything is welded, and this one is actually printable. Okay, now let me go through and check the human hair, and once we know the basics and how to create a simple hair fur-like thing, we can go and look for the human hair. Now here we go, this is the female head. And we also have a light box prepared. So these are the references. It's a good idea to have some references. So if you don't have anything specific in mind, it will be much harder because you have to focus on the technical realization of the project, and also you have to pick up ideas and make decisions on the go. So it will be a little bit of a hard thing to do. Now we have a couple eyes, and this model is already painted. I will turn on the painting later on, but right now just let me start and make some organization tricks. So what I need to do is I want to create a wig for this figure. So let me duplicate the figure first, Ctrl Shift and D, and it will create this duplication. No, it doesn't work because I have record on, so let me turn on duplicate and move it to the side. Perspective should be turned off, so yes, perspective turned off. It is great. Let me turn off everything else, so I'm pressing Shift on the eyeball to make sure that only the female head is selected, and to avoid any later issue, let me rename it to wig right away. So I'm holding down Control, probably switching to the BST brush, and holding down Control will help me to switch to a mask. Now, honestly, yeah, it was accidentally turned off. So here is a mask, but it is good. It's not bad, but the problem with the painting with the mask, it's not that accurate, especially around the edges. So what you can do, and this is why we turn off perspective. So I'm holding down Control and dragging outside, and Control is held down, and clicking on the brush, and you can switch and select Mask Lasso. Now Mask Lasso is working this way, so we're starting from here, just cornering the ears. There is some more, and maybe end up here. Okay, I still have to add the top of the head, so that's add more, and voila, here we go. So this is our selection. Maybe we want to make some paint corrections. We can go down, Control, and switch back to Mask Pen, change the brush size, and if you want to make it a little bit sharper around the edges, what you can do is holding down Control and change the focus shift to a lower value, and that will end up with a little bit of a sharper edge. Can you see the difference now? So because focus shift was changed, I can be a little bit more accurate, and this single adjustment can help me to make a little bit better paintings. Yeah, all right, that's it. Hairline is okay, seems to be okay. That's great. Now, so what we need to do is turning on Shift F to see the actual wires, and I don't think we need that much of a resolution, so let me check the resolution before I make the conversion. So geometry, and it has 3 subdivision levels. Now the numbers are not visible, so let me turn off this temporarily. 6 million. Okay, so this face has 6 million points, and actually we don't need that much, so let me lower down, and this would be okay, or actually 1 subdivision is enough. Now I will delete the resolutions, the other resolution, Okay, just let me press Ctrl W, and this is creating a new polygon group for the selected parts. And now I can delete the higher resolution. Layer recording. Alright, I forgot to turn off the layers. I had a couple of things on layers, so noise layer is there. So let me delete the layer. And now, once I'm rid of that, I can go back to geometry and delete the higher. Okay, that's it. So here is the Vig, and I have to delete the face. So to delete the face, I have to choose the selection tool. So Control and Shift is held down, and Control Shift is enabling me, if I'm clicking on the cap, now only the cap is shown. Sometimes if you click in directly on a polygon, this is what happens. So if you're just zooming in and clicking on directly on a tiny part, there's a chance that you have a different type of selection, or you can actually drag a window and now you have only a few polygons selected. So when you see that not the selection error, just hold down Ctrl Shift and tap outside the model, and you will get back the information and do it again. Or you can actually undo the operation. So selection is an undoable operation, so you don't have to worry about this. So Control and Shift and select the model, and because we don't need the face, we can delete that. So go down, Geometry, Modify Topology, and don't forget we already deleted the higher resolution, so there's no resolution levels, only one, the actual resolution level, and delete hidden will help me to get rid of every other information. Now, as you've seen in the introduction of the hair fibers, we use polygon groups, and at that stage the polygon groups were calculated from the polypaint, but right now we don't want to do that. So to make it a little bit easier, we can use masks. So the process is the same. Control and creating a mask, and then press Ctrl W, and it will create Shift F. Actually, to make it a little bit easier on your eyes, I will turn off the wire. So the wire, the line, is this tiny script. Probably it will be visible if I can grab it. It's not easy. Okay, now I have it, so it will be visible here. Here's this line script, so you can turn this on and off, and that way you see only the color. Okay, and as you see, I had an error because the painting was not accurate that much. So what I have to do, I have to make these polygon groups. Now, to make it a little bit faster, the first polygons will be created with the lasso, and then I will use the painting method. Now, what is the logic here? So if you check the images, especially this one, so this image in particular, and this is showing the hairline fairly clearly. So what you see here, here's the divide of the hair. So this is one side of the hair. This is another one. This is combed to the opposite. And so we have to generate the first big 3 hair groups, and once we have the big hair groups, then we can divide it further. Okay, so let me click it down, shrink it down, going back, and Z, and actually start to create a polygon groups. So I'm holding on Control and switching the mask to the mask lasso. So, and turning off symmetry. Now this is a huge point, so don't forget, turn off symmetry, because when you want to create independent groups and asymmetrical groups, symmetry will not pay you much. Okay, so here's the hairline, so the first hairline, and I will cut this up like this. Okay, Control W, maybe add more. So Control and W, and just adding some correction, maybe back to the mask pen and paint to this. Okay, Alright. And Ctrl W. Alright. So this is what we have. This is the first undo. Control and Alt to remove from the selection. Control and W. If the color is not good enough for the eye, you can Control Shift, select the model, and Control W until you see something that's easy to recognize. Or you can go back. Let me go back completely, and Control W, or undo and Control W again. So every time you repeat this process, it will update the color. Now, my problem with this selection is that it was not enough asymmetrical. So let me go back, make a correction, make a paint, and make sure that is fairly asymmetrical. Okay, so Control W. Now, alright, again, Control W to get a different color. Now this is the rest. Control Shift to select the rest. So I'm clicking on the rest, and Control and switching to Mask Lasso again, and cutting up this area. So this will be another. This will be the third main hair group. Well, let me make Control Shift, Control, switch back to Mask Band, and make a tiny correction on the curves. So maybe this way. Okay. If you want to create a nicer and cleaner and smoother draw, what you can do is holding down Control and go up here into Stroke and turn on Lazy Mouse. And now you will be able to use the Lazy Mouse function and smooth out a couple things. I will just turn this off because right now I'm not interested in that much. These basic polygroups you should just create fairly clean. Okay, now Control Shift, tapping outside, and this will bring back everything. So these are the three main areas we want to work with, and we will divide them further. Okay, but because we are focusing on this hairline here, this line, this is what we wanted to create first. Now let me look to the side and use this image as a reference. So what I'm looking for is I try to guess the polygon group sizes I want to work with. The smaller the polygon group size will be, the more the work, but usually you will get better results if you have fairly small chunks and clumps of hair. Okay, so maybe here we should use about 20. So just let me start working on this, and I will speed up the video. Okay, so we have plenty of areas now. Let me select this one, Ctrl W to add a little bit of a different tone. Yeah, now it's much better. It's a little bit easier to select. Can you see I'm trying to follow a pattern, because right now the hairline is starting from here, and this is the direction of the hairs. So I want to use these chunks, so smaller chunks here at the front. These are in front of the ear, so if I start to combing them, I can drag them around, and these those hairs that are coming behind ear, those will be easier to push to the back area. Okay, so this is why I make this differentiation between the hairs. So let me follow the process, and now we'll show the final. Okay, so this is the full hair, and as you see, we have different groups, different directions. So these will fall from this angle. Okay, so let me draw there, and these on this side will be taking place and trying to fall to the front a little bit, like here, or like here in this area. So these will fall to the front, and these here at the back will try to cover this back area. All right, so this will be pulled. So what I'm doing is nothing else, just trying to covering and understanding the power lines of the hair, so where the hair starts and where it ends up. And also I can make my own design decisions, but if you don't have something in mind, if you don't have enough references, it is a little bit harder to complete the whole stuff. Okay, so now it's time to add the fibers and see the head. So go to Subtool, make sure that the head is visible. Actually, we have to have some kind of an eyeball, and yeah, that's good. And we are not interested right now in the polyframe, so polyframe will be important later on, but right now it's not. So go down and look for FiberMesh. We have this Vig, and go to Preview, and actually the numbers and the settings are just as previously adjusted. So what we have to do is just go and crank down. This is the basic value. This max number of fibers is set to 50,000, but right now I will just set it to 40. So 40, and the profile is set to 4, but in this case the profile will be get back to 1, because my goal is not to create a printable geometry as before. And the length was set to 30. 200 is the default, but 200 is still fairly low. So just let me increase the length with some heavy values. So that is right there, and of course the segments should be increased, because the default number of segments was 3, and that's really not enough. So I have to increase it a little bit more, but you don't really see the effect because gravity is turned down, so I have to crank up gravity. 0.5 is the default value. 1 is usually too strong, so 0.7-ish is usually a good kind of a starting point. Now there is the twist is set to 18. This is the default value. I have no problem with that. The colors we are not really taking care of. Probably we can crank down both values for the colors, and we can create kind of a brownish hair later on. But let me first check the gravity. So gravity is okay, but still need to work on the length. Now let me show you the concept of length. Usually when you have a haircut, the haircut is using different lengths of hairs. So, but when the hairdresser starts to work, usually there is just the hair is washed and combed out, and the length is set to equal, at least in the regions. So right now the problem with that is the length is not depending on the actual haircut. The length is just a general absolute length. So some of the hairs are, for example, here, this length is just too short to actually create a hairstyle like this, but the hairs at the back are actually too long. So to solve this problem, usually we are just increasing the length value until we reach a kind of a good overall length. Now here comes the problem. So even if it's set to 2000, it's not enough. So if you want to increase it even more, you can change these values and crank up. Let me close this back, and now this length value is a little bit more sensitive. Okay, so it's when I've set it to 1000, now it's actually fairly long. Now let me share you a tip. So even if you are later on, you can change the length of the hair, but for organizing stuff, to work with the polygroups, to establish the foundation of the hair, it's better if you have kind of a mid-length hair, so not super short, not too long. So this is why I like this bob style haircut, because if you change up your mind, you can always lengthen a few clumps here and there, and that's a completely different hairstyle. Okay, so if you want to go over shoulder length, it's fairly easy to do. Even if you can cut up from here and there, so you can create different styles from this one. Alright, now length is set to 1000. Again, let me show this. Length profile was modified, close back up, and number of segments is set to 15, but it's not that high, so I will increase it to about 24. This is quite a good one. Now we still have a couple values we want to work with. So first of all, the overall was set to 50 by default, and here's a trick. So if you're creating toon-like hairs, or you want to save some time or just experiment, you can crank down this number and set it, for example, to 10, and make a test. So let me just quickly create a test. Shift R is the BPR rendering. Okay, now can you see this was set to 10. So when the max fibers is fairly low, for example like 10, what you can do is to increase the coverage. So coverage is set to 120, and let me press Shift R, BPR render right at the top. Okay, and now despite we are having a fairly low number of max fibers, it is still covering the face pretty well. So that is kind of a trade-off. You can decrease the max fibers and change the coverage accordingly. So right now I will set back to 40 because it's quite a good density, and the coverage was set to 10. Well, maybe 20 will be a little bit better, and I will keep it as it is. Now the color has a last thing to adjust. So let me switch to kind of a dark brown. So that will be, even if in real life there are hairs looking fairly dark, a full black is not always the best option. So let me choose this brownish. Okay, and with these settings, so profile set to 1, segments 24, gravity, twist, there's some twist, coverage is set to 20, the scales and everything are default, and the max fiber is set to 40, and don't forget length profile is set and adjusted to have a better impact of this length slider. So this is why 1000 is enough. And now I'll hit accept, and yes, I want to activate the fast preview mode. If you forgot to click on the fast preview mode, actually just preview settings and fast preview turn on. Previous is set to 50. So if I'm increasing, it will be a little bit denser. If I'm decreasing, it will be less dense. And don't forget polyframe when we're turning on polyframe, because we have created those polygon groups. Now we have plenty of polygon groups for the hairs as well. This will be a little bit tricky to select at the beginning, but you can try it on. You can turn on Control and Shift and tap on a part, and now we have only these hairs selected. Okay, so that's fairly cool. Alright, so go to Geometry, Subtool, and here's the fiber. Now I don't want to make it visible, so the VIG is turned off. female head is visible. So before we are moving on and start working on a hairstyling, there's one thing we should take care of. It's about the equal cut. So we want to use a cut, Control and Shift, and this will switch to the selection tool. But more than that, we have clip curve here, and let me drag it out. Now, as you see, because it started from left to right, the actual area that will be dragged should be on this top area. So where you see the gradient, that is the fall off area. So if you see and experience this, you have to just hold down Control Shift and not releasing the pen. I'm still holding down the pen on the tablet and moving to the opposite side and pressing spacebar. The Control and Shift is still used, and pressing spacebar, and now I'm ready to move, so I can move it aside, make my corrections, and here we go. So I'm going to create a kind of an angled haircut, and then release, wait till the operation is completed, and now I have a clean haircut for this. And of course, if you want just to make the first things, you can press the Betty, Gina, and Albert, the groom hair toss, and the groom hair toss will be ready to work. Okay, so that's it for now. If you don't see it working, in my case, it is because the spotlight is on. So if you have the similar issue, what you can do is open up the sidebar and go to the brush settings. So brush settings will be used anyway. And go down to samples and turn off spotlight projection. And now we have the hair toss enabled. So I will just make some basic hair corrections. Okay, so the groom hair toss is a little bit stronger than usual, and it doesn't mean these brushes are not good. They are good, but you have to take care of them and use them wisely, and usually only for specific goals. So the main work is usually done with the standard brushes, but with a couple adjustments. So first, let me just turn off spotlight. So Shift Z is turning off spotlight, and let me switch to a standard move brush, B, M, and V, Betty, Martha, and Victor. So that's a standard move brush. Now, a standard move brush is not capable to move fibers, at least not the way we want to move them. So the problem with that is, by default, it doesn't respect the fiber property. So what we have to do is go in and look for FiberMesh. So don't forget that brush palette is open here, and we will keep it open. And to have some more room, I might want to close the tools. So double clicking on the divider and FiberMesh, and here's this value that preserve length. This is a quite valuable thing. And what else? Maybe the stiffness. If there's a little bit more stiffness, the accuracy of the brush is a little bit better. Now, this is one thing that we might want to think of. So when this is turned on, it means the brush is not lengthening the hair. What you see here is actually not changing the hair length. It is just pulling out the uneven lengths of the hairs. Okay, so that is what we see. And right now, because we have multiple polygon groups, we will be able to organize the look of the hair a little bit better. Now, how to organize it? So first of all, I will start from inside out, and that is usually the best strategy. So we'll take a look, and for example, here's this this yellowish area. So I'm going to Control Shift, holding down and clicking on this yellow area. And now, as you see here, is our hair. Now, what you need to know that FiberMesh is by default it is masked. So let me start using the tool. So I'm pulling it down. I don't want to use any RGB. It's not really interesting. And one thing that we might want to adjust is the masking type. Now, why do we care about this masking? Probably the stiffness is too much. So if it's less stiffness, it's a little bit easier to work with now. Now the masking is because of the root masking is a little bit strong. So especially for hairs of the first layer, so that's close to the head, close to the skin, and not top layers. Usually the masking is too strong, so it's just it's too stiff here. So let me look around auto masking, and auto mask FiberMesh is enabled, of course, and it's good. But here we are. This is the FiberMesh mask curve. Now this is a linear kind of curve. I will just add a point here and pull it in, and this will help me to move the hair roots a little bit closer to the head. Okay, so that's a tiny adjustment I like to make, and maybe I will pull this hair a little bit away from the skin. Now, if you see, you can see that this is a little bit jaggy, so I will use the Shift key for smoothing out the fibers. But by default, if you're using the Shift key, it is also shortening the hair. Okay, so because Shift has not turned on, so as you see, when I'm pressing Shift, the brush properties will switch to the Shift brush property. And that means FiberMesh masking is on, but the FiberMesh is reverting back to the original. In the case of the Shift, it's okay, but we want to go back after the FiberMesh section and change preserve length. And when preserve length is turned on, when I'm using the Shift, it's not shortening the length that much. Okay, it still has some kind of a shortening effect, but it's not as strong. Now, what happens if you want to adjust length? There's another brush that's fairly useful for this. This is the B, G, and E, like Elmer. So where we are, B, G, E. Yeah, the groom lengthen. Here we are. Okay, so that is for changing the length of the hairs. Okay, so if you want to make a correction, you can use that, and Shift key is helping to rearrange some of the hairs if those are a little bit messy. So I'm using the Shift key to straighten up the hairs here and there. All right, so that was a first layer, and move brush BMV. And with the move brush, I can move this closer to the head. Okay, now let me switch Control Shift, tap outside, and the process is the same. So one by one. This was not that. Oh, actually, it's fairly good. All right, this is it. Okay, so another nice catch. And as you see, we have some issues around the ear, so a little bit larger brush size. Let me pull this and straighten the hair. Okay, so it's a little bit slow. I will do it, and you have seen most of the brushes. So Shift is working, move brush is working, masking was adjusted, so that these are the tools I'm using. Another brush that's good for organizing things is the snake hook brush. I will switch that to snake hook, BSH, snake hook, and also change the masking a little bit. So that is actually, I had an issue that RGB is turned on, so I will turn off RGB. I don't want to paint accidentally these fibers. So pull it and preserve length was not turned on, so I will turn on preserve length and use the snake hook brush as well. Okay, so Ctrl Shift Tab. Now these were the first few layers, and now I will go to silent and make the whole process. And once we are done, then we will talk about how to actually shape and create the forms. Okay. You can also change this front collision tolerance. If this collision is higher, then the fibers will respect the geometry a little bit better. But it will so it won't be as flexible. So if you crank it up, for example, you won't be able to move the hair so close to the surface. So this is why let me pull this back on to 0, use the smooth, and now I have a little bit better control, and I can pull it as close to the head as possible, especially if you have longer hair and there's more weight to the hair. It might be a good idea to focus on this. All right. So to make a hair shorter, what you can do is holding down Shift key, set to smooth, and brush texture. I don't need any brush texture. So preserve length is now reduced a little bit with the smooth. So if I'm starting to use the smooth, I can actually smooth and shorten the hair with the smooth brush. Alright, and then just using the standard BMV move brush. So this hair is coming from the top area, so it's not that close to the head anymore, close to the skin. This will be somewhat of a covering layer. Let me turn back in perspective, Ctrl Shift, and see the other layers. As you see, we still have a lot of groups, so a lot of work ahead. Now this is a top layer, so this will be outside. Usually outside layers, at least at the top, are quite tidy, and the bottom are usually much more clumped. So we will go and make that happen at the end. But right now, at this stage, we are only cleaning up the hairs. So just organizing the groups, make them more combed, more fit. VGA for hair toss. And yeah. Now this is where hair toss becomes really handy. So if you have a bunch of hairs, you want to handle them pretty fast as one. and then we are switching back to the BMV move brush and use the move tools. Okay, front collision is way too much, and this gives a huge distance, you can see, from the ear, and this is why it's harder to control the hair. So if it's too big, reducing this collision tolerance can help a lot. Okay, you don't have to be super tidy at first. You just want to fit these hairs a little bit more. Okay, when you have the basic hairs organized, at least on one side, and you want to adjust them as everything is visible, here comes another issue. So move is turned on, move brush is used, but I can't really select only a single hair group. Everything is affected. So to reduce this, we can turn on auto masking and mask by polygroups. So when mask by polygroup is turned on at the highest level, so 100, that when you're touching a hair polygon group, that the brush will only affect that hair group. So this way you don't have to always show and hide the actual polygon group. You can select, for example, this yellow area and pull it a little bit more, and as I see, this yellowish hair is a little bit higher than the others, so I will pull this up a little bit more, and there's an overlap here. Maybe I want to reduce that overlap and pull the yellow hairs through because it's a top layer, and then select this blue one and try to adjust that. And still, if you wish, anytime you can hold down Control and Alt Control and Shift, and select the specific hairs, and then go back, Control Shift, tap, and see what you have as one unit. But now you have a little bit better control on the overall stuff, and make tiny adjustments. Alright, so here's let me elevate this green one a little bit more, and select the purple. And this purple is quite a top layer, so I will elevate it, lift it up a little bit even more. Yeah, that's it. Alright, so this little trick can help a lot. You can select hair roots, lift them up, for example, to make a better cover. And if we are ready, we can make a test. Right now only one half is organized, but let me see how this thing is going. So Shift F to turn off polyframe, and now we have the pure color, and I'm pressing Shift R to hit render and waiting for the render to complete. Okay, so this hair is not bad. Yep, we have to change the material. We have to paint the hair a little bit, and then things will be better, because basic material is not the best option for this. But I don't see, what I'm curious about is I don't see too many flyers. Okay, so in this case, when you start rendering, the first thing you look for is to look for specific errors. But as I see, there are not much of a flyer, so this basic organization step is promising. So I have to complete the other side, and once these two sides are complete, then I can focus on the styling and making changes. Okay, it's time to create a test render. Maybe this hair should be a little bit tighter. Okay, so the length is not perfect. It's too long around here. Showing more of the neck is a little bit better for style. And I will build up a little bit more asymmetry. So these hairs will be a little bit longer, but this cut will be a little bit shorter to make it a little bit tighter fit. But let me check how this thing is looking. So Shift R to quick render. Okay, a couple stray hairs here and there. So at the top, but otherwise it's quite tight. Let me try to fix this. So a big smooth. Smooth out a couple things. Lift up some of the hairs. Okay, now we should assign a material to this hair, a material that helps to visualize the changes. And for that, we need to assign a material. So right now, the basic material is in use, but I will switch to simple hair material. And this is a little bit better. Maybe hair 2. Yep, hair 2 is a little bit better for the visualization part. Now, because this is the model already has a material, but it's not visible. So let me turn on the poly paint. So poly paint is there. We also have eyes. So the eye proxy was used now, but we have individual eyes. So let me show those. Okay. So here is the figure. Now this will change a couple things, so it's easier to follow what's going on with the hair, and definitely need to change the haircut. So this is too much here, so I will do some changes, especially around the longer hairs. So I'm using Shift and Shift with preserve length, probably reduce preserve length, and that way I can shorten the hair. So some of the hairs will be a little bit shorter. Pulling it up a little bit with the move brush, and then using the smooth to clean up the mess if there's something happens. So control, and this is a long one. So pulling it up, pulling, then using the smooth will fix the problems. Actually, you can do it with a clip brush, but clip brush is, so this one, clip curve. This was working fine, but it may cause a little errors here and there. So sometimes it's faster to use this, but sometimes it creates like little steps. So you still have to use the smooth brush to make the corrections. Okay, so the hair is a little bit lighter. Now another thing that probably we want to see the ears, so this clump should be moved away. So let me drag this and move it to the front a little bit, slightly. Okay, so later on I will make the adjustments, and probably this green one should be pulled aside. There is some error here and there, so I want to give some room for the ear. Oh yeah, that is covering. Okay, so a couple of stray hairs are not an issue. Now I will use the mask by polygroup. I will turn off, because right now I want to move the whole hair as one unit. So I pull them all together, and maybe this area should be a little bit closer to the surface of the skull, and this side should be a little bit more away. So usually there's a natural flow of the hair, so a little bit higher on the top, then there's a little straight line, and then where the ears are, there's a little bit of a volume. So here, same thing, a little bit closer to the skull, pull around the ear, so I can pull around here, for example, and make some changes. Yep, I will clamp up a couple hairs on this side, and use the pinch brush, because right now the hairs are a little bit parallel and not really pointy like individual hair clumps. So I will use that more, and still need to cut from this volume, so I have to regulate those. Okay. Pieces of hair. Okay, now let me turn this to XYZ, and now I have only the Y-axis as living rotation. So eyelash, there's an eyelash, Shift F, and so this is the basic hair. And let me create the test render. Okay, now we will focus on painting and creating hair clubs, and add some wild things to the hair. Now let me save it first. Okay, and now comes the pinch brush. So BPI, pinch brush, and preserve length is turned on because we are working with fibers, and auto masking, mask by polygroups, is also turned on. So this pinch brush will help me to tighten the hairs. So let me select this one and create, and we will do the same thing for many. Okay, the material looks better than the previous one, but I do need some changes around the hairline. So let me grab this. Alright, now we can work on the painting, and by default it's not a necessity to paint a hair, but paint can really help to understand the form and the shape. So I will switch to BG and color tip, and this is already set to RGB, and the color I'm picking is somewhat in a kind of a light brown, because the hair itself is brown. So I can start painting a little bit brighter colors around the tip of the hair. So painting the hair tips. And if you are not satisfied with the area you can paint, you can change the masking process. So there is an auto masking operation in AutoMask FiberMesh, and for this particular brush, here's the FiberMesh mask curve. Now the mask curve tells you that so here's the starting point, here's the end point. So as you see, only a tiny percentage. So if these squares are indicating a certain percentage, you can see that only 1/8 of the length is painted. So what you can do is to drag this one, and that way you can increase the amount you can paint. You can even change it a little bit differently. So by adding another point and pull this up, this means you have more strength on the end. Okay, so this can help a lot if you want to make corrections around the paintings. You can see now it's much more effective, much more stronger if you want to add a little bit of a lighter tone. Now the same thing works with the color root and color mid. So brush G and color mid section. This is the mid section. By default, the mid section is actually calibrated pretty well. So that will be, in my case, I will switch to a little bit of a yellowish, or no, more red. Okay, a little bit brighter red, but still dark. Okay, so this is giving kind of a highlight to the hair. Okay, same here on the back side. So usually the end is a little bit brighter, the mid is the most colorful usually, and the root is somewhat darker and less intense in colors. Now, because there is an overlap between the paint tip and paint mid, we can cycle through and actually paint some of these areas a little bit more intense. Maybe I can keep this color and choose the BG and groom root. So this is the groom paint root, and with the same color a couple hairs should be painted here and there. Okay, so not much, but a couple. And look for, okay, some, and I'm switching now to a darker one and paint that. So adding some variety. Okay, now it's not bad. So let me see how it looks in the render. So hold on for a second. Shift R. Okay, so I'm pretty satisfied with the hair colors. I like the tone. There are a couple of stray hairs, but other than that, it is okay. So What else? Now the regularity and the uniformness of the hair clumps are pretty tight and pretty clean, which one makes it a little bit boring. And here comes the grooming brushes into play, because those brushes can break up the monotony of the hairlines. So I will save it, and let me go and choose and use a couple of the clumps. So BG, and groom hairball is actually a nice one. Let me start with the groom clumps. And a couple hairballs, BG, and hairball here. Again, just to break up the surface, so the very boring straight parallel hairlines with some break can be really exciting. It's hard to see what actually is going on, but as you see, it's if I'm a little bit stronger with the brush, it will perform better. I'm really light with the brush now, so I don't want to add too strong changes. Okay. So it's fairly exciting to see. Maybe I will switch to a different hair material, because right now this is not that nice of a hair material. So let me switch to hair 2, and probably hair 2 will perform better with this particular hairstyle. So let me zoom out a bit. Alright, now, so what else to do? We can actually assign a hair. So if this hair material is good, we can go to any type of brush, maybe BST, standard brush, and turn off Z add, make it material. Hair 2 is selected, so hair 2, and we can go to brush, and color, and fill object. So now the material is assigned to the hair. And another thing, that BG, and we can add hairballs already there, probably as a little bit of a groom spike. So don't be afraid that even if you see less of a hair, because there's a chance that you have FiberMesh and you have previous settings, and the pre-visualization is, the number is a little bit less. So if you want to see more, you can turn on this previs. Actually, it might help you to find the areas you want to break up. Okay, so now I can actually see all of the hairs. So if I see some uniform areas I want to get rid of, it's easier to find and actually paint the hairstyle here and there. Now these are also fairly boring, so let me walk them down, pull them closer. Yeah, now pull them. And rotation will give you a good information, so maybe I should use a smooth brush. So once you have this previous set to 100, it is easier to fix stray hairs. So if you experience any kind of a flyer, you can use that. It's not easy, at least not all the time, because these flyers can really mess up things, but the previous 100 can help you to get a grip on them and find them. Alright, now the biggest strays are, yeah, that one was also a little bit of a mess. Slight rotation. So if you have some imperfections, that's okay. Come on, you're making human hair, so not a big problem if you have a couple flyers here and there. Alright, groom spike, still a bit more. Actually, it's somewhat similar to the pinch brush, but it pulls with a different algorithm, and this adds more 3D look of the hair. So let me go back to somewhat similar view that we had previous times. So this is the view, and now I want to update and create a new render and check if this spiking process is worth the time or not. Alright, so Shift R again. Okay, so there's plenty of irregularity, and it is actually believable. This is quite a nice haircut. Now, if you want to add more to the actual image, we can use a vox modifier, and we can also change a little bit of the behavior of the shadows. So the shadows are a little bit strong now. So what I can do is just let me zoom out a bit and choose an angle, and let me go and look for the material I'm using for the body, and that is so close this up and choose material and put it in, and select the skin shade 4 and choose Vex modifiers and change the strength. And Vex modifiers are for the best BPR. Yes, I'm pressing OK. And why do we care about this? Because in the rendering area, so render, we have a BPR. Render properties, and here we have Vox preview. So now Vex is enabled, and the shadows are the BPR shadows, and the BPR shadows by default rays are set to 12, angle is set to 0. I will set this angle to 20. That will spread a little bit the light, and because the light is spread, the shadows will be also a little bit more scattered. And the rays, because there's a scattered shadow, if the rays are just set to 12, it's way too low, so I'll set it to maybe 30. And change the global strength to 0.75. I still don't like it as it is because it's too much for my taste, so I like to carry this down to 0.5, for example. And maybe the light source orientation is also a little bit boring, so right now it's straight from the top. I will switch it and change it to kind of an angled way. So now maybe this. Okay, so it's promising, and let me test render this. Okay, so here we have the hair, here we have the figure. Practically that is it. I hope you enjoyed the video. So there's still a lot of settings, still a lot of work you can add, but these are the basic principles to paint, cut, modify, shape, calculate, and handle here. Okay, so thank you very much, and see you next time. Goodbye.